Cape Fear Business Roundtable is sponsored by two branding partners located under one roof right here in southeastern North Carolina. Pioneer Strategies is a strategic communication firm focused on helping you build success through effective strategic communication. Pioneer Specialties is your promotional products partner, ready to help you through the entire process from product research through product delivery. For more information about our sponsors, visit capefearbusiness.com.
Welcome to Cape Fear Business Roundtable. I'm your host, Frank Williams, and today we have with us Dr. Chris Sepich, whose business is Your HCPOA, which stands for Healthcare Power of Attorney, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But Chris, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And well, before we get into talking about business, I like to talk a little bit about the people, who the people are that we're interviewing. So obviously, as you know, we live in a fast growing area with lots of people moving in here from all over the place. So tell us where you're from, and if you're not from southeastern North Carolina, how you wound up here.
Yeah, so I'm not from southeastern North Carolina, but I am from North Carolina. Born and raised in Raleigh. Went to high school there. Attended the North Carolina School of Science and Math. Went back to NC State. Studied engineering for a little while. Decided the trip down I-40 to RTP wasn't for me. Transferred to ECU, and that's where I got pre-med requirements. I was actually studying French, was going to go to West Africa in the Peace Corps, but I met a woman who threw a monkey wrench in that plan, and she wasn't the Peace Corps type. Ended up marrying her, and so we got married in Greenville. I went to Louisville, Kentucky for 4 years for my medical residency. And after I graduated, I came here in 2012 and joined a group, New Hanover Medical Group, now Novant Primary Care,
Right.
which I worked from 2012 to 23 before I went full-time into Your HCPOA. So
Which
Tar Heel
New Hanover location were you at?
at the Myrtle Grove location.
Okay.
South, yep. South
I am a
College.
frequent flyer at the 17th Street location. So,
I got you. I got you.
but
One of the original ones.
you
Yeah.
know, exactly. And I thought I was going to be an engineer when I attended NC State, and then similar to you, I co-opted in Research Triangle, and I realized that was not only not the drive for me, but also not the job for me. I co-opted, and I realized the things I enjoyed doing as a hobby, I didn't want to do for a living, and I went and found something else to do, which was about as far from engineering as you can get. So we have that brief dalliance with engineering in common. Well,
But
tell
once
us
an
a little bit
engineer,
about
always an engineer.
obviously your business and your career journey. It sounds like you've had an interesting career path because certainly you've got an MD, but you're doing something different now. So tell us about your business and what led you from being in practice to what you're doing now.
Well, while practicing, I just found a big gap in our healthcare system as a whole. A lot of my patients who moved to beautiful southeastern North Carolina, sorry, to live their final days and retire and have the beautiful sun, eventually became one of their final days. They got admitted to the hospital,
Right.
and when they were really sick, they they didn't have anybody making decisions for them. And the problem with healthcare decisions, it's not a right and wrong decision. It's not like you're paying an electric bill for $120. That's easy. You write a check for 120, mail it in, and you're good. But do you want an aggressive surgery? Do you want a risky surgery or whatever else? They didn't have a decision maker. And when that happens, they kind of linger in the hospital. And I saw that again and again. I was like, there's got to be an answer for my patients here. So I tried to find an answer for them. And I realized there really isn't much out there. So I thought I'd create one. Maybe a little bit of a side gig to begin with. But as I got legal counsel, they said you really can't do both, be the primary care doctor and the decision maker. So I sat on it for a little while, and in 2023, I decided to say, "Hey, there's no one doing this for the people that really need it. And although there's a shortage in primary care doctors, there are other doctors that could take care of my patients. I can go and do this." And so that's when I made the leap.
So tell us a little bit about what it looks like for someone to be your client and what makes you different than having a family member or friend be that agent that works with them and makes their decisions.
Right. So, I mean, I come in already going through the learning curve. People don't have to be a healthcare power of attorney again and again very often. Most of the time, people may do it once, and once they learn everything that they need and say, "Man, I would do it different if I was to do it again," they they don't really get that opportunity. I've already had
Right.
that. So whenever somebody says, "Hey, I think I need this professional," and they call me, I know the process. I'm really familiar with it. So you're getting a physician with not only their knowledge, but their experience, somebody that's gone through the process before a number of times with family members and now clients. And I'm very objective instead of family can have a lot of emotional ties, and it's hard to, and it's not intended, but when you're hearing a doctor explain normally not positive things about someone you care about, you don't really grasp everything, and so sometimes you're not there in whole mind and heart. It's just normally more one or the other. I'm gonna be very objective, and so if somebody wants to be a client, I give them a 3 to 4 hour interview. I really explore what their values are, what their risk they're willing to take, and how much treatment they're willing to tolerate to maintain those values so that I can really speak for them whenever they can.
Yeah, and like most people, I've had family members that have gone through the medical system, and sometimes it's just knowing what questions to ask, when to ask them, how to, for as an advocate for that patient, when to push and when not to push to make sure that you get answers. Is that something you find yourself doing?
E- Exactly. Sometimes people are just so overwhelmed they're not sure really what to ask. But if I could say, "Excuse me, Dr. Smith, can I ask you a few pointed questions about the study?" And it really drives to that physician, Dr. Smith, to say, "Hey, this person can understand me given the details, and then can explain the details so I can really apply that to the person's values for it." And I mean, it can help me understand it too. I'm not a specialist by any means as far as neurosurgery, et cetera, but they can explain it to a board certified intern. It's a lot easier.
And I've observed times where the medical professional will explain it in terms that the patient and their family just simply aren't quite grasping. Do you sometimes find yourself being a translator to help one person understand the other?
I think I was doing that when I was practicing medicine half the time too, but definitely now as well. I want them to truly understand what the situation is so they can have an informed consent and decision even beforehand while they're of sound mind so that if I'm ever called in, I can do that or just help the family understand what's going on. Yeah.
And you said you started the business in what, 2023?
Technically, the LLC was formed in 2021. I signed my first client in April of 2023, and I left practicing medicine. My last day practicing was September 30th of 23, in which I did it full time.
So obviously this is what you're doing full time now. How's it going and what kind of feedback are you getting from clients now that you've been doing this full time for a couple of years?
Yes. So I think it's going really well. 2026 has been a great year. I had to get that foundation underneath me, and since this is new, I'm constantly learning, and I'm trying to make it better and better, and what things are working and not. But really, the main thing, even the first client that I signed to the last client I signed, the number one thing is I'm really bringing peace to somebody because they're really distraught, wondering what happens if I get sick? I don't want to be stuck in a hospital. Now they know that they have an advocate to speak their values when they're not there. And if I could do a catchphrase that is said whenever I walk out the door of most people's homes, it's I feel like a burden was lifted off my shoulders.
And that makes sense because, the family members, like you said earlier, are going to approach it with a lot of emotion, and most of them may have never been through the process of having to be in that role before. And, so to speak, the other side because you've been on the other side as the medical professional who was being asked the questions or maybe not being asked the questions because they didn't know what to ask.
Exactly. I've kind of seen a healthcare power of attorney from all angles. My parents have both passed, and I was serving as a physician, but they were my loved ones.
Right.
I had an uncle who I moved here to southeastern North Carolina from Milwaukee, and I served as his, on top of having patients that were in the hospital, and I was trying to find a healthcare power of attorney for them, and we couldn't. That social work is hounding Facebook trying to locate somebody. And then whenever I was starting this idea of, "Hey, man, there's got to be a better system," the best thing I could do right away was just talk to my patients. So while I was practicing, I talked to patients saying, "Do you have a healthcare power of attorney?" And they're like, "What is that?" And so I'm explaining it, just trying to get the juices flowing so they could go out and get one for it. So I've kind of seen it from all angles there.
You just mentioned that question, what is that? So explain to our viewers what is that? What is a healthcare power of attorney and why would someone need one?
So a healthcare power of attorney is somebody that you select to make healthcare decisions for you whenever you are unable to make it because you're not of competent mind to do that. You might be in a coma, you might have dementia, you might just be really sick in the hospital. And so you say, hey, legally speaking, it's very clear to have a decision maker, a healthcare power of attorney. So there's no confusion for your healthcare team. Now, the law, every state has their own law and pecking order of how they decide who will be your decision maker. And North Carolina has one, but to go down that pecking order, it starts to cause confusion and uncertainty and number one, delays. And so if you, at the top of the order, select somebody, put in writing with a legal document called the healthcare power of attorney, and say, hey, this person is my decision maker, it really makes your healthcare flow a lot smoother and helps the healthcare team out too.
Well, tell us a little bit about what type of people you work with, who your ideal client is, and what would make someone a good fit to work with you.
So, I mean, technically, if I want to say a perfect world, everybody who's an adult should have a healthcare power of attorney, but a typical one is typically older people that are doing some estate planning. Whenever you're planning your wills and your trusts, you also need to select who's going to take care of your finances if you can, and who
Right.
will make your healthcare decisions. And so, um, once people start to do that, uh, that's whenever I'm really starting to fit in that puzzle. But if you really want to say the specific ones, it's the solo ager, the older person that's not married, divorced, widowed, widower, that really doesn't have anybody, maybe never had kids or has some distance kids. Um, and a majority of my clients are husband wife who they have each other, but no safety net after that. And
Right.
so I'm a secondary agent. So if something happens to one of them, I can help the other one out and guide them through it. But if something happens to both of them, there's a safety net for decision maker for both of them.
And I think especially in this area, we've seen, going back to the fact we have a lot of people moving here. A lot of them are people moving here to retire, and they'll move here with a spouse, but a few years later, one of them passes away, and the other one is here by themselves. Their kids are California or somewhere, and to your point, they may not have anyone else here that can fill in that gap. And if something happens and they go to the hospital, they need someone who is local on the ground here that can help make that decision.
Exactly. I mean, that's the number one gap I'm trying to fill. But I do have clients beyond southeastern North Carolina because as long as you can call an 800 number and I can talk to a physician in a 30-minute conversation, I can have a really good idea of what's going on. So if you like to travel to Asheville, even though you live in Wilmington, that's okay. If
Right.
Asheville calls me, I can take care of it.
And talk about how your background as a medical doctor helps you be more effective in this role as far as equipping you with knowing what to ask and that type of thing, and what questions you wish people would ask you when you were on the other side of that coin.
Exactly. I mean, I have some physicians that are clients that whenever I interview them, they say, I've never thought about that because I started to collect all of these questions as I was thinking about this through my experience. After practicing for over 15 years, you see a lot of things from residency to private
Right.
practice. Hearing stories from colleagues going, I had a very unusual case today about this, and I didn't know what to do. And I built all those up to have a pretty thorough questionnaire about what is important for people and what kind of crazy things can happen in life. Because if a crazy thing can happen, it probably will eventually. And so building this repertoire of questions really makes it a pretty thorough interview. And I really get to know what your values are for it. So the physician experience and then the knowledge of really trying to understand that not all strokes are the same, not all cancers are the same. So being able to decipher and understand that from the different stages and the different primaries, it really helps to apply the values to that.
And you mentioned that upfront interview that would be multiple hours long. That's the first step. Walk me through what it would look like if somebody were to begin that process and become your client. I'll talk a little bit about the interview and anything else that's part of that process.
Exactly. So, a concise overview to become my client. If you say, "Hey, I'd like to become your client," well, I'll ask to be welcome into your home and come into your home because that helps me learn a lot of important things about you. If you have golf paraphernalia everywhere, well, golf's pretty important to you, right? If
Right.
you have a full garden, then gardening's important to me. And so there's some unspoken things that are learned in that process. And then I come and during about a 3 or 4 hour interview, going through this process, I like to take some breaks because it could be dense. I want to really find out what's important. I asked you about what values are important in your life. What are you willing to do an intense treatment for or not intense treatment for? And what kind of risks are you going to take to maintain those values? People say, hey, I'm a risky person, but I don't know what that means until I start putting some numbers and
Right.
some situations out. And so as we go through that process, and I want to explain a lot of the things, you say, hey, translating, I ask people, I say, hey, when it comes to dialysis, have you ever known anybody on dialysis? And if they say, well, I really don't know much about dialysis, then I'm going to explain dialysis and what that means to be on
Right.
full-time dialysis, be married to a machine 3 times a week. And I just want them to be informed in the decision they're going to make. And by the time that we're done with that interview, we've got to do a little bit of administrative things. We sign a contract, and if you want to, we can sign a healthcare power of attorney document that my in-house counsel has already composed. I just have to have 2 witnesses, so I arrange a mobile notary to come and the 2 witnesses sign, and we can walk out with everything done, no I's to dot or T's to cross. But if you're working with a lawyer and you want the lawyer to compose it, that's fine. We'll just do that. And so whenever all that is done, my final thing is I give what I call activation swag. It's an 800 number on your phone, a hard card for your wallet, a key fob, a magnet for your refrigerator, all the things that if somebody needs to contact somebody to be a decision maker, any kind of reasonable investigation or looking should be able to find this number so that I can be reachable on an 800 number. And by contract, I'm available between 120 minutes or less. So therefore, that 800 number will be answered, unlike some people whenever they don't answer unknown callers. And then if anything changes in the next year, you reach out to me and we can change those values. This is a very fluid, liquid relationship because things change, health change. And every year I'm going to call you back actively and say, hey, how's the past year been? Has your health changed any medicines, anything you want to update? And there's only minor tweaks then, but by getting those minor tweaks, it's always up to date. So I can say in the last year or less, I've spoken to this person and this is their wishes I'm pretty confident with.
I'm sure during the course of your career, both before you started this business and since you've started it, you've seen people ask all kinds of questions. So, what do you wish that more people understood about this whole process of a healthcare power of attorney?
Well, I wish that they knew that a healthcare power of attorney is not just a form. It's not just checking a box. You have to arm the individual that you're asking to be your decision maker with the knowledge they need to actually represent that. The most heartbreaking thing that occurred to me when I was a physician was the process working the way it's supposed to. Mother had oldest daughter, be the healthcare power of attorney and said, hey, daughter, will you be my decision maker? Yeah. And that's all it was. And so whenever she got sick in the hospital, and I asked the daughter, hey, should we get neurosurgery in? Knowing that she's never going to be as functional as she was, the daughter's like, I don't know. We didn't talk about this. And so I just vision that every night that daughter still puts her head on her pillow wondering, did I do the right thing?
Right.
And I would love to bring some peace to people like that. So I want them to know that. So even if you have whoever you talk to, just at least give them some more of your values for it.
I think, that's so important. You mentioned you'd lost both of your parents. And I have as well. And my father went last year at the age of 93 and a half. And he was pretty clear in his last days, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. I do want to do this. But he made it, and he made it crystal clear what he did not want to do. And, when it came time to make some tough decisions, we were at peace with him because he made it crystal clear that it was what he wanted. And we knew that. And if we'd not known that, it would have been a very difficult decision.
Exactly. I mean, you're hitting that spot on. That's the one thing that I want to really bring to people is peace. And so when I sign emails, it says peace because these are never glorious situations, but we're all going to die one day. And so let's just at least take all that uncertainty and conflict and complexity out and make it as predictable as you can for something like that.
This is a unique business. You're the only person I've ever met who does this in the way that you do it. And obviously you've got a passion for it. So tell us what you love about what you do and what you feel after you help somebody know that you've helped them.
Man, I tell you, the reason I wasn't an engineer is because I just couldn't have that relationship, and primary care medicine gave that. This still allows me to have the relationships, and knowing that I'm filling a gap for people that really have no other option and choice out there it's pretty fulfilling. I'm using my MD, but I'm also an MBA. I did an MD MBA at ECU, so I'm getting to use my business knowledge more than I ever have by starting this business and running it. And then I guess really the final thing for that is just the fact that I have a blank palette. Since no one's done this, there's no overregulation or underregulation or other people getting their hand in the pot. I get to make this business, which is good for my clients, good for me, and good for the healthcare system. If I can offload the healthcare system with this and make it more efficient, man, the overrun healthcare system, can you have a little bit more breather? That'd be great too.
Was there anything else you want to share about your business? I think we've covered a lot. Is there anything else that we haven't covered you want people to know?
Well, about my business is I do want to grow and I want to have other physicians join me so that I can have a little bit of a secondary protection for others. Right now, it's just my wife and I, but we do travel together, and that's a risk for my clients. What happens if somebody runs a red light? I
Right.
do have a succession plan there, but if I can get another physician, another household that would join me, then not only can we grow and help more people, but we can also offload things on each other and spread the risk for my clients. So I'm thinking about making this years to come and longer so that that my clients are more and more protected.
I think it's certainly an interesting business model, and there's certainly a need. I've seen it with people who didn't have those things in place and wish that they did, and then their family member either was maybe not acting on what they thought was in the best interest of the one that was facing the treatment. They were doing what they thought needed to happen because they didn't know any better. It wasn't that they had malicious intent; they just didn't know any better, and they were doing what their instincts told them to do rather than what a plan told them to do.
Right. Well, I mean, you said, hey, what's a healthcare power of attorney? But part of that point is that a healthcare power of attorney has the fiduciary duty to do the client or the person's wishes, right?
Right.
The principal's wishes, not their wishes. And that's not always understood by people. They're doing what
No.
they think they would do versus what the principal should really do.
And if you've got the healthcare power of attorney, but the person never told you their wishes, you're still shooting in the dark at that point. So that's where it's important to have a process and
Absolutely.
somebody who knows what questions to ask and what things to know before you need to know them.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly. I mean, 15 years of seeing crazy things does add a lot of span of knowledge of what to ask.
right. And the only way you get that experience is through experience. You can't get that out of a book. It's through life experience that you've had in your practice.
Yeah.
So
Chat
well,
GPT
changing
won't
gears
won't
and
do
going
that.
back to a couple of closeout personal questions, I always love for our listeners and to get some insight. So, what have you learned during your career that you wish you'd known when you started out? Besides that, you didn't
Well,
want to be an engineer.
yeah, man, I hate putting restrictions to my knowledge of what I can do. Um, God's given me some restrictions that I can't sing and play instruments, but I can do some other things. But I think one of the things that I learned that is that even though when you think you have it all figured out, you haven't. And so you should
Right.
always be working to make it better. And so when somebody comes with a suggestion, you should consider it. I mean, you may have tried it already and it might be a very short consideration, but people have come with suggestions and sometimes are overloaded, but actually listening to them and considering them can be a help. I mean, a community can really help an individual, and they've helped me.
I've seen that in our business where a client would say, "We tried that and it didn't work," and then you try it a different way and it does work. And sometimes it's
Yeah,
just if if I tried to dunk a basketball, it's not going to work. But if somebody who is more equipped to dunk a basketball tries it, they're going to be able to do it. Sometimes it's just having a different person and different perspective involved.
exactly. If there's a little variable change, then maybe it's not the
Yeah,
same attempt, right? Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Well, if someone were starting out in their career, I guess maybe specifically in the medical profession, but not necessarily, what advice would you give that person who's starting out?
Oh, I'm in the medical profession. I can be very specific. I'm like, you might have some bad days, but take a deep breath and remember the good ones, because the good ones get you through the bad ones on everything. I mean, Uh, you can love your job. Loving your job 100% of the days is a very unique job, but loving it
Yeah.
a good 90% of the days like I do now is fantastic.
e- Every job has its ups and downs, but I do things that there are days I wonder why I do it, and other days why I remember exactly why I do it. So I certainly
Exactly.
know that feeling.
Mhm.
And tell us either what podcast you like to listen to, what books you'd like to read, or if you don't do either one of those, what you like to watch on TV.
I'm gonna go with the podcast because I'm a nerd. I love science, and there's this podcast called Science Versus. Um, Wendy Zimmerman, Zimmerman, Zuckerman, sorry, Zuckerman. I mean, I hope she's not listening, but I messaged her. But she goes on there, and I think she does a very good job of an entertaining way of saying what research says about some hot topics. And some of them are kind of pushing the envelope taboo, and
Right.
some of them are just hot topics. And I think she does a very good job of putting together, her and her executive producer, making it fun and interesting. So I listen to that a lot of times when I'm traveling. Science versus.
I'm always interested to hear what people say when I ask that question. I've had some people it's related directly to their work. I interviewed an economist and he listens to podcasts on NBA basketball, not what I would have expected. But he
Yeah.
does it to get away from work and just for entertainment, and, yeah, it depends on why you do it, but
Yeah.
I'm not much of an investor. I have someone who handles my investments, but I listen to one called Wall Street Breakfast just because I find it interesting. It's not that I
Yeah.
directly apply it, it's just interesting to hear, you know. Well,
Yeah.
Chris, thank you for joining us. We've Dr. Chris Sepich with your HCPOA, and we will certainly tag your social media and you post your website when we post the podcast so people can know how to find you. And we appreciate you being with us today. And thank you for and best wishes as you grow your business.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. And if you need anything, feel free to call me, not just with this, but I love to help out the community.
Sounds great. Likewise. And thank you again.
All right. Take care.